I want to invite my next panelists, which are Keisha, Rivers, and I'm going to also invite Rosalind Johnson to join me today because we are going to talk about our little sisterhood circle that we've got going on. All right, so for those of you that are not in the know, this little circle group right here, I have the honor of participating in a monthly community leadership sisterhood group with these amazing women. So I'm going to allow each of you, Roz and Keisha, to introduce yourselves because you do it best. And for those of you streaming on the online community, we're not going to be able to see them, but they're watching us. We say hello to you guys. Thank you all for joining us. So Roz, why don't you introduce yourself?
I will, Lisa May. Hello, and hello, Keisha. So looking forward to today. I am Roz Johnson. I am the Senior Vice President and Chief People and Experience Officer at Build-A-Bear Workshop. I've been at Build-A-Bear now over 8 years. It'll be 9 years in July, and have spent the majority of my career in retail, both specialty and department store. Originally from the East Coast, and now live in St. Louis, where Build-A-Bear is headquartered. And I have responsibility for our field leadership team globally, so North America and UK and Scotland, as well as for our human resources team and our Build-A-Bear Foundation. So I'm really excited to be here. So like this is the highlight of my day. I'll stop there and turn it over to Keisha.
I love it. I love it.
We're about to have some fun now. They're about to have some fun. So I am Keisha Rivers. I am the Chief Change Officer and President of the CARS Group. We are a change leadership consultancy that specializes in the people side of change. So anything that has to do with shifting priorities, or having a merger and acquisition, or divesting, or switching strategies, or starting the new year. Whatever it is, whenever leaders are and organizations are faced with change, they call us in to assist them with equipping, managing, and embracing change across the organization. It is my baby. I founded it 19 years ago. So, when I was 2. And so it has been a whirlwind, and I have enjoyed every single moment of it. And I am so excited to be here with my 2 partners in crime. We're about to have some fun. We were prepping for this call and had so much fun. So I'm ready. I'm
like
ready.
90 minutes of prep for a 30-minute conversation.
Yes. I love it. We originally got together. I'll just say one of our board members, I think he was here earlier. I don't know if he's still in here, Dr. Seth Dobrin, who is also the founder of Quant AI, which is one of our sponsors for today's celebration. But Seth introduced Roz to me, and Roz and I hit it off immediately, and we bonded over shared experiences of being a leader and of color, but also like deeply rooted in impact work and wanting to create impact on our teams and in the world in general. And then Roz was like, you got to meet Keisha, let's get together. And together we've created this safe space that I feel like I wanted to let you guys all in on with this Black Legacy celebration. So my queen, my fellow queens. So I want to talk about our roles. They demand constant engagement and empathy. They demand a lot from us, let's just be real. So how do you maintain your personal well-being and resilience amidst the pressures and challenges inherent in Black leadership?
I'll start with that. That is a panel in and of itself, right? So I think one of the things that I had to learn, and I would say the hard way, is that I can't serve or take care of anyone else. I'm not good for anyone else if I'm not good for me. And that whole idea of self-care, whether it was as a parent, as a wife, as a leader, it was almost like it was foreign. And I think that I just had to, there were some people who had some tough conversations with me, and I had to own that and say, I need to think about myself first. And it doesn't mean that I don't think about others, but I need to think about myself first. And so it went back to changing my behavior and starting my days differently. Like, how do I start my day? I start my day intentionally doing 5 things. First thing I do, open my eyes. I don't grab my cell phone because that was what I was doing. But I express gratitude. Very first thing I do. Sometimes it is, I'm glad that I slept through the night uninterrupted, or I'm glad I woke up this morning. The second thing is I set my intentions for the day. And then I take 5 long, deep breaths. I just breathe. And then I smile. I smile for no reason. But generally, if I do those other things first, it gives me a reason to smile. And then the last thing I do is I forgive myself for anything I messed up the day before, so that I don't carry that into the new day. And it takes practice. Someone said to me once, if you start your day centered, then you don't have to get centered throughout the day. Start your day in a really good place. You might have a minor reset, but you don't have to have a big pause to get centered. And I try to carry that with me throughout the day.
I appreciate that, Roz, because as you're talking about even just the 5 deep breath. Well, first of all, you had me at the don't pick up your phone, and I was like, yeah, that's going to be the hardest one for me. But also, it's that moment of like getting centered. I mean, yes, the last couple of days I've had I've had some things that rocked me, and I was like, I need this sister conversation because I need to remember to get myself centered because it's external. It's external. It's she said stuff. It's external, which we deal with in leadership. And I have to remember that if I start my day to get sent, what you just said, you said it better than I, but if I remember to take a pause, I can better be equipped to deal with the external, right? Keisha, what about you?
So mine is, I had to, because I live, breathe, and die by my calendar. I had to carve out time for myself on my calendar during the week. I am the type, because I have clients that are all over the world and in different time zones, it's not unusual for me to sit down at my desk at 6:30 or 7 in the morning. Well, now it's, closer to 9 or 10, but 6 or 7:30 in the morning, and not get up for another 12 hours, 12 to 14 hours. And I too had some people just like you, Roz, that tugged on my coattails, like, excuse me, you're kind of burning the candle at both ends and in the middle. Um, and I had some very candid conversations with some sister friends of mine who said, you can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And as Black women and Black leaders, Black women leaders in particular, our natural inclination is, we've got this. We're going to put it on our backs. We're going to carry it. We're going to carry everybody else over the threshold. If you're not ready, we're going to bring you along and do our things too, because we're nurturers, and we are the keepers of the culture in terms of wanting to see people do better. So I had to, retire my Wonder Woman lasso and the Supergirl cape, and the invisible jet that was carrying everybody else around. And a few things that actually helped me were, I set a timer and I put time on my calendar, intentionally, 15 minutes 4 times a day. I get those 15 minutes 4 times a day all to myself. And I space them out now where there's 15 minutes in the morning, not once I've gotten up, because, I too, like Roz, I start my day kind of easing into it instead of, diving in. But 15 minutes in the first part of the day, just being quiet, just listening, just, letting whatever is bothering me, churning around, all of that kind of just dissipate. And then I do 15 minutes in the middle of the day. I do 15 minutes at the end of the workday, and I do 15 minutes before I go to sleep. And those 15 minutes are to reset and to recenter me, and to allow me to let go of anything that has happened throughout the day. Because, you know, I can start off centered in the morning, and Lisa May, you mentioned some things that were going on. I can start off great, and then people just start peopling.
They tried you.
Didn't we have this conversation in our prep? I think I remember that. I think there was a song to go along.
We'll have to drop that song in the chat.
You know.
But really, it's about being intentional around putting yourself at the forefront in this moment. So if you can't do it the whole time, just 15 minutes, 4 times a day.
Yeah, I just wrote that down. I think you told me that once, Keisha, but I probably was doing something else at the time and and didn't write it down. So now I just wrote it down. The other thing I would add is that there's power in the word no. My sister is a classic overcommitter, and then she gets annoyed because she's got so many things to do. Although I think she kind of wears it sometimes, you know. And she's called me once and she said, "How do you say no?" I said, "Depends on the situation, but no is a complete sentence." So sometimes it's a hard no. No, I can't do that, or no, it's not. I don't believe it's the right thing to do. Or sometimes it's I can do it, but I can't do it for you right now.
Right.
So it's a softer no. So, you know, I think that it's recognizing that people will come to you with many things. And I am a visual person. If I have objectives, goals, something I'm working on, I tend to put it right in front of me. If you could see in my office, I have things posted on my board. I have a dream board. I have all kinds of things going on. But I look at those things, and when I'm working in the office, especially, they keep me focused. And and the other thing is, this whole digital piece, manage it. For this call, I shut down Teams. I turned off Outlook. Like, it is only about this, because I found that multitasking, I can be okay, I can't be great, and I can really be great if I focus on setting my priorities and focus on that one thing.
One last thing I'm going to add to her saying no, okay? Saying no to something does not mean that you are inferior, that you can't handle it, that you are letting people down. It does not reflect negatively on who
Right.
you are as a person and how amazing you are at what you do. I've started, like, this year, my acronym is ACT. It's alignment, clarity, and timing. Just because someone's asking me to do it, or just because there's an opportunity, does not necessarily mean that it's the time for me to do it.
Yeah.
So we have to be good stewards of all of that. So
I appreciate that, because I got called out on the chat or by one of the board members. But it's true. I need to learn no. I need to learn, that I have focus, and just because the opportunity presents itself doesn't mean I need to take them all. In the face of systemic obstacles and diminishing resources, because at the end of the day, these are the largest threats against those of us that are Black and Brown leaders. What personal practices or mantras do you rely on to stay motivated and committed to your work? Or what keeps you motivated to continue to keep going even in the face of these systemic challenges? Because they're here, they're not seemingly going anywhere. We have to carve our own inroads. How do we stay motivated?
The one thing that there's several things that I do, and several things that I have written. I'm visual like Roz. I have stuff, all over. I'm traveling now, but I have stuff all over my office and my desk. And the one thing I had to keep remembering, it is not about me, but it involves me. And when I realized that it's not about me, so if this is something that I feel passionate about, if this is something that aligns with my gifts, talents, and abilities, if this is something that I feel aligns with my purpose and what I'm supposed to be doing, the attacks and everything else that may come with it, or the difficulty that may come with it, just means that I have to move myself and my personal feelings out of it. because there are times when the work that needs to be done is bigger than my feelings or my perceptions, or, you know, I can't necessarily throat punch people because that's not a good look, you know, like there's just certain things that you can't do. And this is a safe space, so I'm going to say what everybody's thinking, because look, they told me that we were supposed to behave. I'm just saying we're keeping it real here, because this is a safe space.
Yeah, it is.
And it is incumbent upon us, whenever we are doing work that is difficult, and I live in the change space. I am always dealing with people and situations where people are upset, they are hypersensitive, hyper emotional, they're afraid, they're pushing back, they're trying to hold on. There's all of these things that they're pushing back against that I'm trying to move them forward with. So every single day, I have to remind myself, it's not about me, it involves me.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
because I take it personal.
You cannot,
Yeah.
because if you're trying to impact, have a long-lasting impact, if you're trying to create sustainable shifts and changes, you can't take it personally, because that shifts your center, that shifts your focus, and it actually shifts the spirit in which you are doing the work.
Yes. See, this is why I love this sisterhood circle, because I get checked and we check each other and we check in. Because you're right. Like I don't think of it like that. I'm like, well, I mean, yes, it involves me, but yeah, I'm like, this is about me. Like what the, you know, and I think that I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. Like especially when it feels like an attack against my livelihood, against my personhood, against my culture, my identity, everything. It's very difficult. And thank you for the reminder. It's very difficult to separate myself from the work and from the purpose and passion. And then from the identity, like my identity is this and the work is also this. But yes, I love it. I love what you're saying. Like, yes, but it's not about me.
Yeah. I would say amen to all of that. You know, when like Keisha, I think about who I serve, and this work, especially, you know, when we start talking about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space, it is hard. It is nothing, even before the most recent attacks. It was hard, especially because you felt like you were making, in some cases, the business case over and over and over. And when you think that you're beyond that. And I remember Keisha saying on one of the calls that she and I had, what other business initiative can you think of in your career that has taken this long? To achieve. And that just stuck with me. I shared that on another panel. And the other thing is, and like I think about, I have a daughter who's doing this work. She is steeped in this work at a major organization that I worked at over 20 years. Before I had her, I worked at this organization. And while I'm proud of the work that she's doing, it saddens me that the conversations that she's having are conversations that we were having 20, 25, 30 years ago. Just better language. They might just have different language, but it's the same stuff. And now it's all, you know, there are things that are just so under attack. But when I think about how hard it is, I think about her. I think about my other two daughters. I think about these, you know, black and brown people who look like us, who are out here, and I feel like it is our, while I don't take the work personally, it is personal in terms of a mission to say, how do we continue this? How do we leave wherever we land, whether it's our own businesses or organizations that we work for? What do we want our legacy to be? How do we leave? Like when you look back, what, you know, beyond the stuff that we have and the thing, what do you want your legacy to be? Like, what do you want people to say about you when you're no longer in that space or you're no longer on this earth? What do you want to be remembered for?
Right.
I don't want to be remembered for the fact that I held like 4 jobs and, you know, or whatever, you know, like what is the difference that you made? And the other thing I want to say is the person who connected Keisha and myself is also on this call, Aubrey Avery. And Aubrey knows, because Aubrey and I did this work and worked together in that same place a few decades ago. So I owe a big thank you to my friend Aubrey Avery.
I love that. Like it's the community for me.
Yeah.
Because Seth is also on this call that introduced you and I,
Mm-hmm.
Ross. This
Mm-hmm.
sisterhood is directly impacted by other humans on this call. And talking about community, you know, creating change can sometimes feel like a solitary journey. Um, how have you sought out or created communities of support among fellow leaders, and how has this impacted your approach to leadership and the work that you do?
Yeah, I would say this. Like, I think like what we create, people are in this call might think they must have known each other for a long time. We have not. We have not. Aubrey connected me to Keisha, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, I think. Maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Aubrey's chiming in. Yes. And then in September, I met Seth, or Dr. Seth, as I like to call him. And Seth said, oh, you need to connect with Lisa Mae Brunson. She's doing cool things. And Lisa and I, as she said, we could, we didn't have enough time for the conversation. I immediately sent Keisha a message and said, oh, I think I found a kindred spirit. We need to wrap her in this. And we've been going since then. So I think you can define community in many different ways, right? I think like when I met Dr. Seth, it was at Total Retail Tech. And I thought, I'm not a tech person, but we're going to talk about people. Like there's people in the room, we're going to talk about people, and we're going to talk about this work in the context of what it looks like in this tech space. And I went in intentionally to make connections in that space, like to spend those 2 days making connections, and they have paid off, I have to say, really beautifully. And the fact that we sit here, the three of us today, is for me proof of that.
Say this. So I've been a loner for the better part of my life. Like I've been around people, and there are a lot of people who know of me, but my real tight circle is very, very small. And I usually kind of roll by myself. There are times, I'm an introvert with extrovert tendencies. And so there are times when the introvert in me was like, yo, I can't people anymore. But over the last few years, I've actually, about the last 10 years or so, I've been intentional about seeking out community. And the way that I look for community is I look for people whose energy and frequency matches mine. And if they are people that we can laugh and joke and have a good time with, if they are people who show up fully, wholly, authentically as themselves and don't make any apologies for who they are, if they are people who appreciate all of me, not just the pieces of me that can serve them, if they are people who are going to challenge me and not let me hide from what is difficult, what is bigger than I can even imagine. And it's very interesting because a lot of times when we go into rooms, especially if you're, someone who is looking at moving up in your career, or if you are doing work where, you have your own company and it's always about, we need to network. I don't go into rooms looking to network. I go into rooms looking to connect. So I may not talk to everybody, but I will talk to the people that I need to talk to that will help with that. And so last year, I became a member of a women's organization for Black women who own their own companies. And I was intentional about that because there are some women that just blow my mind in terms of how they have grown, started, formed, scaled, and grown companies and created such an impact, to where the first time I was in their meeting, I was just looking around like, okay, I feel like I'm slacking here. Like I should be doing more. Like you all have just like raised the bar. But it's just this whole thing of being in a space and finding community where there is connection and people allow you to be seen, heard, and valued. That's what you look for. And your intuition does not lie. So if you go in spaces and you're talking to people and, they kind of grate where you're like, not really feeling like leaning into this, then, kind of keep it moving and find someplace else.
I want to talk about you know, we're talking about creating safe spaces and community, but we're not always going to find that, right? So, you know, Michelle Obama says, like, when they go low, we go high. Well, do you feel that we always,
Oh, oh, oh.
I love
Okay.
how both of y'all went, she did it. She did it. Yeah, because
Sometimes people make it really, really hard. And I've shared some things with you too that I won't share on this call, you know, and I look back and I go, oh, that was not a bright, shining moment in my leadership. And then I'm like, but you know what? It was necessary. Sometimes it's necessary. I truly believe people treat you the way you allow them to treat you, and that's in any space. And while I don't mind being challenged, I don't mind someone asking a question. It's when that challenge is not coming from a place of from a positive place or a place of wanting to understand, or that question is phrased in a way that is not respectful, that I have to really, really take a breath. And before I respond, and sometimes I just respond. I will just have to check them. I just do.
yeah.
And, and,
But that's all. But
in my head, I hear our song.
Yeah, yeah. I have
that was,
now, and here's it. So there's a professional, as I call it, a redirection. And so
She's so much better than me.
there's a redirection that may need to happen
Mhm.
because maybe you are mistaken about
Mhm.
who I am and who you're speaking to. And here's the thing that I look at in terms of when they go low, we go high. Yes, I am not trying to get into a mud fest and be down there in all the stuff that is basically a waste of time and energy and effort. I get that. No problems. I have no problems with tuning all of that out. What I look at is when there are spaces and opportunities, as Ross said, when you are sitting at the table, when you are having conversations to move the needle and to impact things in a positive way and trying to work together collaboratively in order to be able to bring about a long-term change or even an incremental change.
Mhm.
And there is blatant disrespect, there is disregard, there is an attempt to silence. Those are the times when that conversation and needs to be redirected. And at this point, you know, Keisha 5.3, she's good at doing that. You know, Keisha 2.1 used to do that a lot too, but you know, she had a little bit of a different way of doing it. But you know, with age comes wisdom, and so a big part of this is when you choose to respond, not react, but respond.
Mhm.
When you choose to respond, are you responding in a way that does justice to who you are and to
yes.
your level of integrity and to who you see yourself as being and showing up in the world?
Yeah.
Again, it's not about them. It's really about what you're trying to accomplish and who you are. There's a way of redirection without getting into the mud. I don't do mud.
Yeah. I feel like I'm like, because I've had to master the art of delivering that message without yelling and taking the emotion out of it, but the message is really clear.
Mhm.
It's really clear.
I appreciate you guys going there with me because I feel it's important to talk about that piece because we are supercharged sometimes in these environments. We can get off our game. We can lose ourselves in a moment. We can get into a heated discussion. And I feel like a lot of these like panel discussions about leadership don't go there enough where it's like, hey, wait a minute, I lost my cool, or hey, I don't like what's happening. I
Mhm.
did, you know, not have a bright shining moment as Roz mentioned. I love Keisha saying, you know, I'm going to redirect. I'm going to gently redirect this.
I'm gonna hear you in my head the next time it happens.
It
Like,
may
redirect this.
it may not be gentle. There will be a redirection, but it may not be gentle. Just
Um,
by that, there is a redirection, and the level of the redirection is in direct response to
mm,
what I think is needed to get my point across to you.
yes.
And there are times when I have not, it has not been my shining moment. But I think the other thing, going back to when we talked about, making space for ourselves and all of this, we're human.
Mm-hmm.
Like, aside from the work, aside from, the titles and the responsibilities and the goals and all of that, we are human. And there are so many efforts outside of us that's trying to strip us of that humanity, where we cannot show emotion. We cannot be, upset about things. We can't show that anything bothers us. We can't do any of this. And the mental health of our communities is suffering because of it. People are suffering in plain sight.
Yeah.
And so it's this whole thing of, I don't do anything anymore that is going to cause me to have high blood pressure, heart issues, health issues, all of that, because I'm only given this one body and this one space and time with this one life that I know I have.
Mm-hmm.
I can't hedge my bets on, what I'm going to come back as or where I'm going to go after this. So I know what I have right now. And I think that when we embrace our humanity and show people that, yes, we are human.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things that I know we had on our list to talk about, and it may be for another time, but it's like, what do you do when you feel like you're challenged or isolated, or like your efforts are not really bearing any results or anything? I think that sometimes it's hard for us to say we have to let it go. I have at least twice in my career said, you know what? This might be for somebody else, but it's not for me. It was good at one time. It's not serving me the same way now. If this is what you need someone to do, if this is what you feel the need is, then I owe it to this organization, which in one case have been very good to me. I owe it to this organization, but more importantly, I owe it to myself to step away and let you make space for somebody who wants to be and do what you want them to be and do, because that's not me. And that becomes about, to Keisha's point, your mental health becomes about your integrity, your spirit, in some case, your physical health. It's just, an environment where it's just not healthy because you think you can change or they'll change. They'll change. If I just keep doing this, they'll change. I'll change their minds. That is not sustainable. It's just not. And that is tough because we're talking about your livelihood. It becomes, sometimes, you just have to stay for a period of time until you're financially in a position that you don't want to have to do that. The first time I had to do it, though, I said, never will I be held hostage to someone's paycheck. Never. And that's a whole nother behavior change about how I manage my life, mentally, physically, financially. It's just, I don't want to be held hostage to anything.
I think the one thing that we have to recognize is, you made a great point, Roz, when you said that we're expecting people to change, or we're holding out hope that people will change. Mm-hmm. Change is a process that begins with an event. And that process of change does not happen unless there is a shift in the way people think.
Yes.
Your behavior is a direct representation of your thinking and your thought process. So I don't want to try to check your behavior. I want to check your thought process. Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing to shift your thinking, you're not going to change your behavior.
Right.
So I can have a few conversations with people and figure out, okay, are you willing to have that aha moment and to really learn and to shift the way you're thinking about this and to transform the way you're thinking about this? Because here's the thing. Once you change the way someone thinks, or once someone agrees to be open to changing their mindset, they cannot go back to the way they were. Mm-hmm. They can't do what they used to do because we're not wired that way. So you just have to make a decision and like, okay, are you somebody that's just playing the role right now? You're saying the things, but you're really, every time I try to bring up something, or we're trying to have a conversation, or we're trying to do something, you keep going back to the old way and trying to make that point. Then, as they say, bless them and release them, because you need to put the effort into that.
Absolutely. You're probably getting a high sign, Lisa May.
The what?
I said, you're probably getting the high sign because we're past our time, aren't we?
Yeah.
We have a few more minutes.
Okay.
But, going back to your point of, talking about, when to hold them and when to fold them, essentially, for the people that are still in the game, the leaders that are like, okay, I've picked up the mantle, like I'm gonna keep going. Like me, I'm gonna keep going. There's still enough fight in me or fire in me. There's still work in me that I'm willing to do. How do you, or what would you suggest would be an opportunity to overcome the feeling of working in silos? And how do you create spaces for collaboration? Like, what do you suggest these leaders do to kind of refuel, essentially?
I say find your people. Keisha talked about it, going into spaces to connect. And sometimes it's in unlikely places, and it does not always work related. It's like we talked about community earlier. Who's in your community? Like I have a group of women that I've been friends with for 30 years. We met each other when our children were just infants or preschool. We bonded over books and food and a little bit of wine. Um, and um, and we've gone through everything where it's life changes, it's loss of parents, it's marriages, relationships breaking up. But I know whenever things get really hard and I'm at that place where I need a safe place to go, it's that group. I don't have to get all of them together. I don't need all 12 because I think you have to know your chicks and who everybody's got a role. And I know there are a couple of people I can't talk to because they can't relate. But I know there are in that group, there are women I can talk to and say, hey, I just need a minute. At one point, we talked about buying a space. We said we don't need a big space. We just need like a loft space. And we could all, when the world got to be too much, we all had a place that we could go to. And that was escaping, whatever was happening in your life. And if you showed up and someone else was there, then the rule was you couldn't talk. Like there was no talking. You just need quiet. And on a serious note, when I get to that place, or when the world gets heavy for me, I make myself less accessible because it becomes about me. Even if I'm sitting in my office now, I have a glass front like panel, and I had it frosted because some people walk by, they're looking at. I'm like, I need a place where I can close the door and just sit with myself for a minute, or sit with whatever is happening for a minute. And for me, I make myself, just doesn't mean I'm unapproachable. It just means maybe it's the 15 minutes, Keisha. It just means I need a few minutes to just sit with myself and really think about what's happening around me and why I might be at risk of being off center or unsettled in some way, or when something is just hard.
Kind of like a temperature check. Like,
Mhm.
do I need to do I need to put my own self in a corner?
In a corner,
I
right?
just like regroup.
Mhm.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Roz.
Yeah.
In terms of seeking out community. So for people who are in you're in kind of silos naturally because you're the only. In most of the spaces I go in, I'm the only. So if I want to find other people to build community around, I have to be intentional in terms of going to seek them out.
Mhm.
I will say this: social media has the opportunity to connect you in really profound ways with people who do not live in your backyard. You have to be intentional though.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I do, I curate my social media feeds all the time. So anytime something pops up that I don't want to see, okay, block, not doing that, snooze, okay, don't want to see this ad, all of that. So my new thing has been I go on TikTok because TikTok is a glimpse into having conversation and seeing people. Like we're not live talking to each other, but I'm hearing you express yourself. I'm hearing you, share your thoughts and all of that. And I would go in and I would put in keywords for what I'm looking for.
Mm.
If I wanted someone who was in the leadership space, if I was looking for Black women, if I was looking for somebody who's in a certain age, if I was looking for somebody who's in another country, like I started curating my feed and seeking those people out and then making connections. I was having regular calls with this woman who lived in Spain. There was another woman who lived in Israel. There was an expat who moved to Morocco during the pandemic. All of these people I met online. So there are ways for us to connect and find people who can become our community. And the other thing I will say is this has become, especially in 2024, there have been more communities and collaborative groups by and for Brown and Black people that have been being formed in reaction to, in response to the attacks that have been waged.
Yeah.
There are all types of groups. There are running groups. There are, reading groups. There are wine groups. There are all of these spaces where, and what it took is somebody said, I'm not in a safe space where I work because I'm the only. I'm not in a safe space in my role as an entrepreneur because the people that I serve, it's a battle. So let's create our own safe spaces and let's invite people in. So there are tons of groups that are forming, meetup, social media, all of that. Check them out and be open to looking for the connection that you need, because we cannot operate in a vacuum, y'all.
Right.
We cannot.
Right.
We absolutely cannot.
Amen. Amen. Beep beep.
I was waiting for that.
I was waiting for that too.
So just to kind of let you in, we were talking about how, as Black leaders, it always seems like there's something out to get us. We were and in our relating to the experiences we've been through in our careers, we were talking about Wile E. Coyote always laying out the traps and trying to get that roadrunner, and the roadrunner just like sidesteps and calmly just goes beep beep. Right, while Wile E. Coyote blows his own self up.
Yeah.
And so we just want to move in that space of just being able to get to that point where we're just like beep beep, life will be lifing, but we will keep on beeping.
Absolutely. Keep it moving.
Keep it moving. Well, I am grateful that we got to spend this time together. I'm grateful for this sisterhood and for finding you all, because, I am the only one. I mean, I'm the founder of my, an organization, and I work from home, and sometimes it can be incredibly challenging and quiet. But also just dealing with the very real challenges that the DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging industry is facing right now. I'm sure many of you are aware, we are being defunded. If you were in the earlier session, as we were talking with Grouchy Greg Watkins, talking about the less than 1% of funding going to Black and Brown startups, it's horrific that we are in 2024 and we can't even get a significant piece of the pie just to exist and have dignity, have a livelihood. And we have to find safe spaces to keep going, or we are facing, challenges with our mental health and the fatigue and the burnout and all the things. You see the headlines. So we wanted to make sure that that there are safe spaces and communities. You can create a sister group just like we did. You can check in monthly, check in weekly. Keisha gave some great suggestions for different groups and avenues. And find us on LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn. You're not alone. That's the main thing that we want to share, is that you're not alone. You're not in a vacuum. We got some sisters out here that care. And we appreciate all of you.
Reach out. Reach out.
Reach out.
Try Jesus.
Make yourself a Build-A-Bear. And I was actually thinking about making myself a Build-A-Bear.
You should.
My own little shiro. I can look at you. Yeah, look at you. Like have my own little shiro that I can look up to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me where you want to go. I'll tell them to be ready for you. We'll make it extra special.
I appreciate. I've never done it.
You'll love it.
So yeah, I'm really excited about that. But thank you both so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Happy Black History Month, and keep on shining.
All right.
I'll see y'all at next month's
Thanks, everyone.
call.
Absolutely.